started. All right, cool. Well, welcome to the workshop. There she is. Hi, Wendy. I'm going to start just by sharing my screen here. And so, yeah, what we're doing today is we're just going to go over everything that we talked about in the, oh, wait, one sec. I always do this wrong. I need to pin myself. There we go. Everything that we talked about in all of the emails, we're going to review them. This is going to be really good if you enjoy reading, but you're also maybe an auditory or a visual learner. Go over any concepts that were maybe confusing to you, as well as dig into them a little bit more. But I do want this workshop to be very interactive, so I really appreciate your participation in the chat. So definitely type in. I'm going to be asking you questions, asking you how things went this week with some of the homework. So definitely pop into the chat as much as possible. And with that, we are going to get started. So first, I'm going to introduce myself. Hello, my name is Juliet Hammer. I am a climbing coach now based in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and I help climbers of all levels gain confidence on the wall through strength and technique coaching. My bachelor's degree is in biology, and I am a certified strength and conditioning specialist, as well as a certified precision nutrition coach. As far as my climbing history goes, I've been climbing since 2005, so for 16 years, almost 17 now, as we're nearing in on 2022, which is wild. My history and background is as a competitive climber. I grew up doing the USA climbing competitions, and some notable results are that I got second place in the 2014 Collegiate Climbing Nationals, as well as 11th place in the 2017 Open Sport Climbing Nationals. But now I primarily climb outside. I really love bouldering outside. That's my main thing for sure. So I'm super stoked for the Southern season here. And I've bouldered up to V11 with 35 outdoor ascents, V10 and up. And I will say that I also climbed V10 in the gym. Just had to mention that after all the drama this week. All right, so before we dive in, I do want to just go over the awesome prizes that we have for this challenge. So I'm giving away a tension flashboard and shoe spray, as well as 1-month training membership and 5 one-week training memberships to Adapt. So as you feel comfortable, just so that I can keep track of who's here. If you're here, go ahead and pop your email into the chat. If you don't want everyone to see it, you're welcome to just private message me the email, and this way I can just keep track of who is here and make sure you get your extra 2 raffle entries for the challenge. If you do end up private messaging me, just make sure to message the group if you do participate later on. Awesome. All right. So getting started, this is the overview of what we're talking about today. First, we're going to talk about what is tension, just reviewing that lesson from the emails. Then we're going to talk about supportive strength exercises, common tension pitfalls, tension versus momentum in practice, then tension skills, and a question and answer. And I do just want to give a shout out to my friend Nathalie Dupre, who took all of the photos that I'm using in the presentation tonight. She is a local Chattanooga photographer, and if you do want to follow her on Instagram, her handle is right here. She takes some really sweet photos. All right, so beginning with what is tension? So reviewing the education from the week, we know that tension is the behind the scenes of the movement. A lot of the times our attention is focused on our movement. What am I doing next? Where am I putting my foot? Where am I moving my hand to? What do I need to do with my body? How do I need to move? But we know that tension is the force we apply to the wall to counteract gravity. It's literally what is keeping us from falling. So it is just as important as the movement. The tension and movement have this intertwined relationship where we need tension to support our movement. We also know that the intensity of tension that we use on the wall is going to be variable. Sometimes we need to have a ton of tension, trying to create as little movement as possible. And sometimes we need to let go of that tension and allow for more movement and more momentum. And as mentioned, the best way to practice using tension on the wall is going to be practicing that on the wall. We also talked about how tension is created between the points of contact that we have with the wall. This can be 4 points of contact. So for example, in this photo here, I have all 4 points of contact on the wall. I have 2 hands, 2 feet. And we also talked about how that force is distributed among these points of contact. So as we move down to 3 points of contact or 2 points of contact, we still have to hold that same body weight. So the intensity really increases as we take limbs out of the equation. So for example, when I was reaching for this hold, when my right hand wasn't quite on the hold, I only had those 3 points of contact, my left hand and then my feet, and I had to distribute that force throughout those 3 points of contact. And then, like I said, it gets even more intense if we only have 2 points of contact. And tension is going to be variable, like we talked about, but there are some basic patterns that it follows. There's lots of big fancy words here, but those are contralateral tension and ipsilateral tension. So I'm just going to pause this video. Contralateral tension is cross body tension, and it's when we need to connect our one hand all the way across our body to the opposite side. And so we're creating tension all the way across our body. In this example, I'm using my right hand and my left foot to create force and to support my movement. And I do have my right foot on, but the force is unequally distributed. So while the right foot is helping, the main drivers of this movement are going to be my left foot and my right hand. So if I kind of rewind here, I take my left hand off and then I'm pulling in with my left foot and pulling in with my right hand in order to move my body to that next left hand hold. The other type of tension is going to be ipsilateral tension, which I'm curious if you all thought of any better way to name this. All I came up with was same side tension, but this is when we're creating tension on the same side of our body. So in this example, from here, from my left hand to my left foot. So again, my right hand is able to move because of the force I'm creating between my left foot and my left hand there. I do have my right foot flagged, and there is a little bit of force that it's taking, but again, the main driver of this force is going to be my left foot and my left hand, so that my right hand can release and come around. Okay, so I want to see how the homework went. So for this lesson, I asked you all to create some moves on the wall that required that cross body tension and that same side tension. So I'm curious what you all found, if there was one type of tension that you had significantly more trouble with or you felt significantly stronger with. And on that same line of thought, if you had one side of your body that you felt much stronger with than the other, definitely pop that into the chat and I will wait to hear your answers. If you didn't get to the homework, no biggie, but I am curious if you did get to it, what you all found. I know for me personally, the right side of my body is much stronger than the left. And I also think that I tend to be better at cross body tension versus that same side tension. Did anyone get to the homework? Yep. Okay, so Janelle says, oh, okay, now we got the responses. Kira says, same side tension felt harder because of the barn door. Exactly. So it is quite a bit challenging because we just lose that stability and we have an entire side of our body that is free. So it seems like everyone had similar experiences. Cross-body tension was easier, Janelle says, and not a huge difference between sides. Dylan says weaker on left and same side. Michael says prefer the cross. And then Sarah Ann said thinking more about tension on the woody, which is perfect. Yeah, even just having that intention to your practice and while you're climbing is perfect for, yeah, just practicing that tension on the wall. And Wendy says it seems that the setting at her gym was more designed for crossbody, which definitely makes sense. We do probably encounter those types of moves more often. Nathaniel says left foot better than right. Yeah, definitely some preferences for one side over the other. Sweet, awesome. Well, I'm really psyched that you all were able to do that homework and yeah, notice some things about yourself. And that's really great for guiding your practice. So if you did notice, yeah, my right side is much stronger than my left. Okay, now I know when I go into the gym, I should definitely practice some of those left side dominant moves just so that I can make sure when I encounter them on a project or outside that you feel confident with that. As well as, yeah, maybe practicing some of those same side body tension moves. Sometimes you have to make them up yourself if you don't find them in the setting quite as much. So awesome. Thanks so much for all of your answers. All right, so we're going to move on to the next section, which is supportive strength exercises. So now we know what exactly tension is, and we know kind of how to practice it on the wall. Let's talk about ways that we can strength train to support that. Again, number one way to get better at tension on the wall is going to be practicing on the wall, but there are things we can do off the wall to prepare our bodies for what we do encounter on the wall. So first and foremost, if you've been following me for a while, you probably know that I am a huge proponent of barbell weightlifting. And in my opinion, the number one best exercise for tension is going to be the deadlift. And it's why I included it in my tension and core mini guide, which you should have received when you signed up for my email list. And if you didn't get it, definitely let me know and I can send that over to you. But the reason why the deadlift is so great for tension is because it is an excellent biggest bang for your buck posterior chain exercise. And just as a reminder, the posterior chain is all of the muscles along the back of your body, all from your shoulders, your lats, down through those core muscles in your lower back, to your glutes, to your hamstrings, to your calves, and then connecting with the ground through your feet. And so what we're looking for in this posterior chain is a connection between all of these muscles and having all of these muscles being recruited and used and engaged together in order to create force. So when we have that connection, we can create that tension. And if we are losing part of that chain, that's where we see a loss of tension. And this posterior chain is what we use when we're climbing on really steep overhung type of climbing, because again, we're asking our bodies, hey, you need to create tension from the very tips of our fingers all the way down to our toes. And again, we need to have all of those connection points, because if we lose it, that's where we're unable to hold that tension on the wall. So again, deadlift, best bang for your buck exercise, because one, it is measurable. You know how much you're lifting. You can see the progress, or you can see if you regress at all, and you can take action based on that. It's also titratable, which means it's easily progressible. Hey, I lifted 100 pounds this week. Next week, I'm going to try to lift 105 pounds. You're able to progress it in that measurable and titratable way. And again, it just generally prepares the body for climbing. Yes, the deadlift is not exactly what's happening on the wall, but it is a great way to learn how to recruit all those muscles and strengthen them for climbing. That being said, there are some exercises we can do for what's called kinesthetic awareness, which just means an awareness of where your body is in space. So these are more body weight, kind of calisthenic type exercises that are really good for just creating awareness for what we're asking our body to do on the wall. So we're going to start with just some different plank variations. If you don't have access to a barbell or weights, or you're not quite comfortable doing that, the plank is a posterior chain exercise. And so we're going to talk through different plank variations to kind of recreate what we see on the wall. And these first two are going to be what I call tripod plank variations. So we're creating a plank with 3 different points of contact here. So the first one is going to be shoulder taps. What we're doing is we're in this high plank position on our hands, and we're lifting one arm at a time to go through. What we don't want to see here is shifting of the hips. What we want to focus on is creating that tension to keep those hips nice and square to the ground. And so I'm just going to pause it here. So again, 3 points of contact, 2 feet, 1 hand, and the main driver of this tension is going to be that kind of cross body tension, where here I'm actually really focusing in on driving through my left foot and creating that connection between my right hand all the way across the back of my body through that posterior chain to my left foot. The right foot is helping. It is, we are distributing that weight to the right foot as well, but not quite as much tension. So again, creating that tension allows you to keep those hips really nice and square. If we lose that tension and we create movement, that's where we see those hips shift back and forth. So the intention of this exercise is to create that tension, keeping those hips nice and square to the ground. Another variation that you can do for a tripod plank is going to be called a renegade row. This does require some dumbbells, but again, we're just lifting one arm at a time, really focusing on keeping those hips square. What we don't want to see again is those hips shifting, because that's where we lose that tension, and we're using movement to get through the motion rather than that tension. So again, really looking for those hips to be nice and square to the ground. And this first variation of the renegade row is going to be the most challenging because I'm switching arms as I go. So I'm asking my body, okay, create this cross body tension. Okay, create the other side cross body tension, and switching back and forth. So if you do need to regress this exercise, you can switch to doing just one side at a time, which can look like just having a high plank, doing all one side at a time, like I said. So that way here I'm asking my body, all right, left arm to right foot. That's what I'm concentrating on. Now I'm getting through some reps. And also, if that position is uncomfortable for your wrist, you can always make a fist to keep that wrist a little more neutral. Or if your gym has like the perfect push-up bars, then those work as well. So that's kind of a way you can regress this exercise a little bit and just focus on one side at a time. And then you can slowly work up to alternating back and forth. Again, these are just kind of fun kinesthetic awareness exercises. These are something you can kind of add on at the end of your workout as accessory core exercises. But again, if you have to choose one or the other, definitely go for the deadlift, because that's going to be the biggest bang for your buck. But yeah, these are useful for just adding a little burner at the end of your workout. Or if you do have a project that really has this really intense move, and you kind of want to warm up for it and like remind your brain, okay, these are the muscles I want to activate and engage on the wall. These are a good warm up as well. All right, next we're gonna move on to the contralateral crossbody tension plank variation. So here we're going to be moving from 3 points of contact down to 2. So we're adding a little bit of challenge here. And my favorite exercise for creating this is going to be the bird dog. And in this video, I'm going to show you 4 different variations of it. So you can challenge yourself in different ways and progress or regress the exercise. So first, the way the bird dog works is we're just lifting the opposite leg and opposite hand from the ground. Sometimes it takes a little bit to get used to doing that. But starting on our hands and knees, this is going to be the easiest variation of the bird dog, where I have my knee and my foot down on the ground, and I'm just going through and switching sides. When I filmed this, I realized that on one side I was laying my whole foot down, and on the other I had my toe down. Doesn't matter which way you do it. Point is that you have just more body on the ground to distribute that weight through. The next variation is going to be to lift that foot off of the ground. So we just have our knees and hands on the ground. This is going to be a really challenging stability exercise where, yeah, we're asking our core to stabilize through it. It's a little bit harder to like drive through and create tension, like in the next exercises I'll show you, but this one is very, very challenging. I actually filmed this today, and every time I do this variation of the bird dog, I forget how challenging it is. But same thing, opposite leg, opposite hand, asking ourselves to stabilize through that posterior chain across our body. The next step up is going to be a high plank bird dog. And here is where we can really start thinking about driving through those feet, again, creating that same cross-body tension. And then the last variation is a low plank bird dog. My personal favorite is the high plank bird dog. I find it the most challenging for me, but different people find different variations challenging. I'm not going to force anyone to do this, but since this is my favorite exercise, I do kind of want you all to give it a try. If you're somewhere where you can just hop on the ground real quick, you can try whichever variation you want, but just give it a few tries and pop into the chat and let me know what you think. Or if you have worked with me in the past or currently work with me, you know that I love to throw bird dogs into a workout. But yeah, definitely give them a whirl real quick and see what you think of them, because they're deceptively challenging. And then let me know what you think. I think my chat is slightly delayed. There we go. Yep, low plank bird dog is hard for sure. And so you'll definitely be able to feel not only like on the front of your core, but again, thinking about that posterior chain, you'll probably feel some engagement through, of course, your side abs, and then also those lower back ab muscles. Yeah, we love bird dogs. Awesome. Yep, harder than expected. High plank bird dog. Yep. So these are really, like I said, really, really excellent. And they bring that kinesthetic awareness to what we, yeah, knee on, toe off. That one is definitely really difficult, Sarah Ann. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely good to try and go as slow and controlled as you can in order to create that tension and try and keep those hips nice and square, trying not to move at all. If we speed it up, sometimes we can either like kind of get off balance or we'll see those hips shift. So trying to go slow and controlled is definitely good. And yeah, just starting with the variation that you feel like you're able to control well. But yeah, like I said, this is really relevant to those cross body tension moves that we see on the wall of creating tension from one hand across the body to the other side foot. Thanks for trying that, y'all. All right. Oh, we got one more. No, not necessarily fun, but useful. Definitely. All right. So the next plank variations we'll go through are just the same side ipsilateral tension plank variations, which are just kind of good old side planks. So again, 2 connection points, one hand, one foot, but they're on the same side of my body. I'm asking my body to create that connection from my right shoulder all the way down to my right foot. And that's where you'll really get that definitely side ab engagement there. You can do just a regular high side plank on your hand like this. You can add variations. You can lift a foot, lift an arm. There are many, many different ways to do a side plank. And then you can also do a lower variation. Again, kind of create fun variations. If you were to Google side plank variations, it would come up with a ton of different things. But again, if there's a move on a climb that really emphasizes that same side tension, you know, doing a few side planks, warming up that side of your body is definitely a good move with these kind of side plank moves. My personal favorite variation is going to be a side plank with rotation. So rotating around, adding some movement in there, just creating a little bit of instability and asking the core to create stability around it. But again, tons of different plank variations. And also, again, if you work with me, you have probably done a side plank with rotation or two. All right, cool. I guess let me just take a second to pause and see if anyone had questions about that first section. I know that was a lot of information. And if no one has questions, then we'll just move on to the common tension pitfalls. But I'll wait a second and see.
I have a question.
Oh,
So I love deadlifts, but I do them at Planet Fitness and they have only Smith machines. And so like with a traditional squat rack, you can like you start so much lower. And I guess like do you have any tips for getting more out of the Smith machine deadlift?
yeah. I mean, that's definitely that's definitely challenging with the range of motion. But yeah, I would say work with what you have, because they don't have dumbbells at Planet Fitness either, right? Or
They
do
have just, I mean, they have like regular like free weights and they have like the straight bars, but they only go up to like 60 pounds. Yeah, so
yeah, I mean, I would say depending on how heavy the dumbbells go up to, you could definitely do a dumbbell deadlift. Just because one thing about the Smith machine is that it doesn't um, require quite as much core engagement because it is semi-supported. And so having, the free weights like a barbell or dumbbells adds that extra stabilization component to it. But if the heaviest weights available that you feel like is an appropriate weight is the Smith machine, that's totally okay. And just work with what you have there for sure. Yeah. Janelle asked if there is an advantage to doing deadlifts with a barbell rather than a hex. Yeah, so the hex bar, I mean, it's just slightly different, right? Like it has your arms by the side. And so that's kind of what we would call a farmer's carry. And so it's just kind of slightly, it's good for people who have issues with kind of shoulder impingement and have trouble having the barbell in front. So the hex bar is good for that. But it does kind of change the engagement of the lats and shoulders, just the way that you do have to engage on a barbell and pull those shoulder blades down and back and create that tension. Yeah, thank you for coming. And yeah, the recording will be sent out later. So yeah. Yeah, the way you have to engage with the barbell is slightly different than with the hex bar where your arms are by your side. The hex bar also kind of lends itself to a bit of a squattier deadlift, if that makes sense, which is just, again, slightly different. But if there's only a hex bar available, you're still getting a good bang for your buck out of it. But I definitely do prefer the barbell just with the way that you do have to engage the lats for it. Hope that makes sense. Cool. Awesome. Thanks for the questions. All right, so moving on to common tension pitfalls. So reviewing that education from the lesson, we talked about tension versus momentum and them being on a spectrum. On one end of the spectrum is 100% tension, no momentum, which looks like either no movement or trying to create as little movement as possible. And then on the other side of the spectrum is all momentum, zero tension, which looks like a lot more flowing of a pace, a lot more loose, relaxed, and creating as much movement as possible. And realistically, when we're climbing, we're going to be probably somewhere in the middle here. And we'll kind of bounce back and forth between the ends of the spectrum. And that's why it's so important to feel good on either end of the spectrum. Because if we trend towards one side or the other, then we're definitely missing out on some of the moves we could be performing more efficiently. So pitfall number one is going to be too little tension. So this video was included in that tension and core mini guide. And this is just an example of climbing really loose, where on each move, I have to recreate that tension before I move again. Definitely climbing really loose. This isn't as good of an example of using a ton of momentum, but when we do use too much momentum, too little tension, we lose accuracy, precision. We don't have so much control over our movement. And so moves that do require that more precision, more accuracy can be really challenging. And then the opposite side of that is going to be too much tension. And I actually don't have a video for this one, but this is a picture from last weekend at when I was climbing at Stone Fort here in Chattanooga. And this was a climb that was a very long climb. So it kind of did this really long traverse. And then it had a pretty challenging, energy intensive kind of gravel mantle top out. And I made the mistake of climbing too slow, trying to be too perfect throughout this section, which is actually an easier part of the climb. The holds are good, but I was just trying to be too in control. And I ended up using too much energy on the traverse to where when I got to the end mantle, I just didn't have the energy for it and I ended up falling. So too much tension is definitely a thing. If we're trying to be too perfect, have too much control, sometimes we think, oh, good technique, that means climbing super, super perfectly and precisely, but that can actually lead to inefficiency. So good technique sometimes doesn't look that good, but it is still good technique, and sometimes being perfect is inefficiency. Wendy says, I do that when I'm so focused on the footholds and readjusting them on overhangs. Yeah, sometimes we just really slow ourselves down and we end up using a ton of energy and we end up fatiguing pretty quickly. All right, so again, asking how the homework went. Yeah, let me know which side you end up trending towards. And for this homework, we did an exercise where you climbed really loose, really flowy, really relaxed, and then you did the same climb climbing really tense. And I asked you to think about, okay, which moves felt really good when I was using all that momentum, and which moves felt hard, and then vice versa, which moves felt really good when you were going slow, accurate, precise, tense, and which moves felt hard that way. See, Sarah Ann and Rachel say trend towards too much momentum. Yeah, and definitely continuing to build strength to do those kind of slow, tensiony walk-offs it definitely makes sense. And kind of same thing with the other side is sometimes when you trend towards slower climbing, it's because you're so strong. You can kind of use your strength through moves that actually would be more efficient using momentum. Janelle says usually climbs with too much tension, very methodical and static, too much tension when things get hard. Yeah, I definitely personally trend towards climbing a little bit slower, not using quite as much tension myself. Yeah, and Sarah Ann says, I have to be more tense when I'm on a 45, but on the roofity roof, I throw between jugs with lots of heel hooks if possible. And that makes sense too. Like there's definitely a time and a place to use momentum if you are on good holds that you don't have to feel as in control on. It can be good to use that momentum. So awesome. Okay, so we're going to look at tension versus momentum in practice because, like I said, it's a relationship between the two. We don't want to go too far one direction or the other. And within moves on the same climb, we'll see lots of tension on one move and then lots of momentum on another. So I'm going to play a video of me on a boulder. And so what I want you to do is we're going to watch through it this first time, and I want you to pick out moves that you feel like I used a lot of tension on. So pick one or two as we watch through, just looking for, okay, when was there a lot of tension here? This climb is kind of long, so I'm going to stop it in a second. All right. Pop into the chat there, which move each time I come in. Yep. While bumping. Yep. a lot of tension while bumping through that right hand along the pockets. Yeah, so that was definitely probably the most tension intensive move, is when I put this heel hook in. And the reason why it's so tenuous is kind of the distance that my right hand has to travel. So my right hand's kind of far, but I need to let go of it. And so my right hand is holding a lot of tension. And we'll be talking about this in the next section. So I replaced my right hand with a heel hook. And now that heel hook has to take that tension that right hand was originally holding. I have to core up and then use a lot of tension in order to bump my right hand along. So that was definitely the most tension intensive move. All right, now I'm gonna go back to the start and I want you to watch again, and I want you to pick out a move or two where I used momentum or there was a lot of momentum involved. Oops, sorry. All right. The little foot swing, then the leftward throw, and then releasing the heel. Yep. Out to the Gaston. Yep. Yeah. So definitely on that first move where I had created a lot of tension, there's actually a little toe hook in there. And so when I released that tension, that's where that momentum came in. And then, yeah, same thing. It's that balance. I created a lot of tension with this heel hook to bump in. And then once my hand was where I wanted it to be, I released that tension, which had some momentum. And then, yep, throwing out to here, I had to throw my hips, use some momentum. And then kind of similarly, if we just watch through the rest of the climb, I get to some better holds where I do feel comfortable using more momentum. So definitely some momentum here, swinging the legs. And then we have that balance of some tension where we get a release of the right hand, boop, tension. So again, every time we're on the wall, there is that balance of using tension and using momentum and that interplay between the two, and why we want to make sure that we feel good on either end of that tension versus momentum spectrum. All right, cool. So talking about heel hooks and toe hooks, we're moving on to tension skills. And I'm kind of curious. Thank you, Rachel. So I'm going to play some videos, and I just want to know if you all can hear the audio. Oh, when I get to it, not quite yet. So reviewing the education, talking about lower body pulling. So we know with tension, we're using our feet to pull and engage that posterior chain that we've been talking all about. And when we use our feet, whether it's our toes, heel hooks, toe hooks, we're creating that opposition. Like I kind of talked about with that heel hook, where I created that tension so that my right hand could move. So we're creating that opposition to allow for that movement. And then the tension that's created must be released. Again, as we saw in that video, I had the toe hooks, got extended, and then like kind of like a slinky, I had to release that tension. Okay, so let me know if you can hear this audio or not. Or actually, this one doesn't have audio. So the first one is point work. When I talk about pulling in with the feet, and that's where we really try and pull in with that toe by lifting that heel above our toe, versus if our heel is below the toe, we get more of a pushing kind of smearing action. When our heel is above the toe, we can really kind of dig into the foothold that we're trying to use. And we also get, some mobility around that foothold. Okay. Next one is heel hooks. The heel hook is a multi-part. Can you all hear this audio? First, of course, you have to place the heel hook. But as you can see, only placing it doesn't get me to where I want to be.
Yes, okay,
My
cool.
hips are too sagged out from the wall.
I'm gonna start it over then, just since I was talking through that. Okay. Oops. Shoot. I went back to the beginning. Apologies. I am not the most technically proficient person ever. All right, back to the video.
Heel hook is a multi-part move. First, of course, you have to place the heel hook. But as you can see, only placing it doesn't get me to where I want to be. My hips are too sagged out from the wall. What I need to do is engage the heel hook and pull my hips into the wall. Pull in with the heel to engage the hamstring and glute, while pointing the toe down to further engage the calf and hamstring more. This brings your hips and knee into the wall. Here's an example from a 45-degree angle. Again, when I place the heel hook and don't engage, my hips are too sagged out to reach the next hold. I must pull in and get my hips in close to reach. I do want to point out that these first two examples have been piecewise in movement. I engage and then I reach. However, it is possible to do this in all one motion, as in this example. Here I'm pulling in and reaching all in one dynamic movement. Lastly, one of the purposes of the heel hook is to hold tension, and this tension must be released at some point, whether dynamically or statically.
All right, so those are the heel hooks. And then next is going to be toe hooks.
A great place to start your toe hook practice is a corner arrêt, moving your hips further from your toe and weighting the toe hook more and more. Next, focus on the angle between your toe and your leg. As you can see, the more I flex my toe towards myself and create a 90-degree angle with my ankle, the more weight I can get on the toe hooks. Lastly, keep in mind that the toe hook's purpose is to keep tension, and at some point that tension has to be released, whether dynamically or statically.
All right. So for the homework for this lesson, I asked you all to practice and create different moves that require the point work, kind of pulling with the toe, heel hooks, and toe hooks. So let me know how that practice went. And since these are kind of like the more technical moves of the lessons, I wanted to see if you had any specific questions about heel hooks or toe hooks or any of those skills. And again, if you noticed anything with your practice that was surprising or something you want to work on more. Yep, toe hooks have always been way harder for me than heel hooks, Sarah Ann says. Yeah, I definitely find that people have a preference for one or the other. I personally am a heel hooker. Janelle loves toe hooks, but heel hooks are more difficult because hip flexibility is not great. What do I like to do to improve hip flexibility? Yeah, you can definitely do like mobility type workouts. I don't know if you follow Mercedes Polomeyer on Instagram. She's Modus Athletica. She has some really, really good climbing specific mobility workouts that I really like and use with my clients. But also just kind of doing it on the wall is useful too, just like slowly, working on the opening up those hips, being really intentional while you warm up with it and just trying to create that mobility on the wall too is definitely possible. I have a theory about who likes toe hooks versus heel hooks, and it's totally anecdotal, but I think it has to have to do with like leg length versus torso length, or something like that, but I haven't proven it yet. Rachel says, I have a hard time engaging the legs during heel hooks. Don't know if it's weakness or lack of confidence. Without engagement, they don't really help me, so I rarely heel hook. Yep, that definitely makes sense. And that could definitely just be a continued practice thing, and starting with heel hooks that you feel are really approachable and creating those moves for yourself and just practicing that motion. Definitely that arrêt is also good for heel hook practice, just because it's a little bit easier to pull in on those kind of compression type climbs. So those are a really good way to practice. Here it says, I love toe hooks on lip traverses, but elsewhere heel hooks typically feel more my style. That makes sense for sure. Yeah, theories. Yeah, I think it's like if you have shorter legs to your torso, then you like heel hooks more. I don't know. It's not proven, but I'd be curious. I'd be curious to get some data on it. Awesome. Michael says, I don't like toe hooks, definitely prefer heel hooks. Yeah, I should do a survey. Next project. Okay. Nathaniel says, if you put your back against a flat wall, both feet in front of you and raise your toes up, that helped with the toe hook strength. Yeah, just kind of that that muscle on the front of your leg. Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Kind of getting that flexion. Awesome. Okay, so again, thank you so much for coming. Super stoked to raffle off these prizes. I'll be doing the raffle tomorrow morning and announcing the winners. I'll be emailing the winners separately. But I'll be sending out the recording of this. And I did just want to say, even if you don't win one of the prizes, I do want to say thank you for participating in the challenge. So I'm going to also be sending out some coupon codes for ADAPT, which again is the training membership. That is standardized workouts delivered on a weekly basis with strength workouts, hangboard workouts, and climbing workouts. So if you enroll using the coupon code, you can get $15 off the first month of the month-to-month plan, or $20 off of the first payment of a 3-month paid in full. And you'll also get a free 30-minute call. And with that, I want to open it up to any more questions you all might have. And yeah, thank you again so much for coming. I'll switch it from the presentation so that we can all see each other. Hey, everybody. Yeah, thank you all for coming. Any other questions?
I have another question.
Yeah, shoot.
Sorry. So watching you, so I know you're like a smaller climber and I'm like kind of tall for a girl and a climber, obviously. But something that I've noticed you do and that I've seen some of my friends do who are like maybe closer to your height is like cutting feet really strategically on a climb. And I feel like I would give my firstborn child that will never exist to never have to cut feet on any climb. And as much fun as it is to like throw for something, it feels so inefficient. So I'm wondering if there are like, is a specific like recommendation you have for just getting more, first of all, more comfortable doing that strategically, but also identifying when it is actually the smarter thing to do than just like keeping your feet like really far away from your face.
Yeah, totally. So it definitely makes sense as a taller climber because you do just have more body that's coming out from the wall. So you have a bigger pendulum. And so it definitely makes sense. That's super valid. And yeah, definitely just to get comfortable with it, you do just have to like force yourself to do it. And the best way to do it is, because I know you mostly climb on a home wall, right?
Yeah, and like outside, but yeah.
Yeah, so on your home wall, I know you have like some jugs up. Just forcing yourself to cut feet on every single move on a climb that feels easier for you, where you just cut your feet, bring them back in, do a move, cut your feet, bring them back in. And it is tiring, so make sure you have energy for it. But yeah, just forcing yourself to get used to it. And that will also kind of help you figure out when it does feel good to cut feet. Like, you know, when I was in this position, I was holding a lot of tension and it felt like a lot of energy. But when I cut my feet and then I brought them up, it felt more efficient. So that's usually where you'll find it's better to cut feet versus keep the tension, is when you end up in these like really extended positions and you're just forcing yourself to hold so much tension, and it's really hard to move small in like smaller steps. Sometimes it's easier just to let go and bring the feet up a little higher. So hopefully that makes sense. Yeah, you're welcome. Anyone else? All right, awesome. Well, thank you again so much for coming. The recording will be coming out, so you can always come back and watch it again. And if you're watching the recording, thanks for watching the recording. So with that being said, I will stop the recording.